Notes, check. Sunglasses, check. Hat, check. Thick skin, check. Let's go. Golden Blue Dude back with another video just for the college football fan. So hit that like and subscribe button if you are a college football fan. And go check out our Patreon page when you get a chance. A lot of perks over there. And don't forget our score prediction contest will start back up again in September. Every week we award $20 to whoever gets the closest to the exact score prediction of the game that I pick. The higher the Patreon, the more guesses you get. And you can win as many times as you want. Also, $5 and up Patreons get to pick the live stream that we're going to do. And you get to watch the game with me. And we have a great website designed and created by Joey Foster. I actually wanted to do a quick video on why West Virginia football will be better this year. I mean, it's easy to speculate, it's easy to guess, but there are actual reasons as to why West Virginia football is going to be better this year. But in order to determine if we're going to be better this year, we have to look at last year. So here's a look at the 2021 West Virginia football schedule. Now, if you look at this schedule, most of our losses were really close losses. It starts off with the first game at Maryland. We lose 30-24. Anybody that watched that game knows that West Virginia actually could have won that game. We were a few mistakes away from winning that game. Next game, FCS Long Island, easy win. Then we got Virginia Tech at home, and we beat them with the 4th and goal stand. It never should have came down to that. We kind of gave away the fourth quarter, and I was nervous. I was at that game, but we held them. Then we went on the road to Oklahoma, and honestly, we were one bad snap away from beating Oklahoma, but instead, they kicked a game-winning field goal and beat us 16-13. That actually carried over into the next game, and the next game was the game that kind of broke our season because it let Oklahoma beat us twice. We came out flat in the first half, didn't score any points. We came roaring back, but then we let Texas Tech kick a game-winning field goal 23-20, and we were never the same after that. After that, we went on the road to Baylor. We got blasted against Baylor 45-20, had no shot of winning that. After our bye week, we went back on the road at TCU and actually beat them comfortably 29-17. Came back home, beat Iowa State in a close game, and we actually scored some points. 38-31 was the final score. That was probably our best offensive game all year. But then the next game, a home game against Oklahoma State, they held us to 3 points. Never had a shot in that game. We went back on the road. We had a shot to beat Kansas State on the road. But again, a few mistakes led to that loss, and we lost 34-17 after they added a touchdown late to kind of stretch the lead. Came back home to Texas, beat Texas, a down Texas, but hey, a win's a win. But still, it came down to a stop. We had to stop them. We only beat them by 8 points. Finally, on the road to Kansas, another close win. We get to our bowl, the guaranteed rate ball, and I warned West Virginia fans we had no shot of winning. Everyone's like, oh, you're just being a down. It was a bad matchup, and it proved it. Minnesota beat us 18-6, but if you watch the game, it was never in doubt. Minnesota was the better team. It was a mismatch, and based on the matchups, I knew it was going to be that way. So if you look at last year, it was a bunch of close losses, and it was specifically on our offense. We never could score enough points to beat our opponent. Our defense did great. There was a couple of games where they slipped up, but for the most part, our defense did great. Now we head into the offseason. What happened in the offseason? Well, we had a great recruiting class highlighted by the 4-star cornerback Jacoby Spells and the 4-star quarterback Nico Markle. High praise for both of these guys. For the top 35 recruiting class, if you look at our overall recruiting under Neil Brown, it's actually headed in an upward direction. And our 2023 recruiting class is looking good already. We already have a top 100 recruit this early in the 2023 recruiting class. But of course, those won't affect 2022. So let's talk about 2022. So on top of talking about recruiting, you have to talk about who you lost and who you gained in the transfer portal. So the names that really popped out as far as who we lost in the transfer portal was the 3-star quarterback Nick Troy Fortune, who was a starter, got injured, couldn't regain his position against Charles Wood. In other words, he got beat out once he came back from his injury. So he transfers to UTSA. I really don't think that affects West Virginia. Maybe in a depth situation, but as far as our starting defensive backs, really doesn't affect us. People were talking about losing 3-star linebacker Josh Chandler. He transferred to Colorado. The main issue with Josh Chandler is he was an issue in the locker room. Last year I was hearing there was a lot of cliques in the locker room, and Josh Chandler was one of the main instigators. So he transfers out. It was a mutual decision. Let's get that straight right now. That was a mutual decision. That's going to help out our locker room situation. We also lost 3-star cornerback Daryl Porter Jr. to Miami. He had flashes of being a pretty good cornerback, but overall he took way too many gambles. Maybe if he settles down and makes better decisions, he can be a better cornerback for Miami. But overall, I think that hurts us a little bit on depth, but that's about it. Then we jump over to the offensive side of the ball. We lost 3-star wide receiver Isaiah Isdale to Rice. The main loss with him is on the return game. He was one of our return guys. But overall, not that big of a loss. Wide receiver Sean Ryan, the 3-star that transferred to Rutgers. Sean Ryan didn't want to be here anymore. He contributed somewhat on the field, but that's not a major loss for West Virginia. 3-star wide receiver Sam Brown, he transferred to Houston. If you didn't see that coming, then you were blind. He wanted to be with Dana Holgorsen. Dana Holgorsen was his guy. That doesn't hurt West Virginia much. 3-star quarterback Jarrett Daggy. A lot of people were like, oh man, we lost our starting quarterback, transferred to Western Kentucky. Yeah, you were asking him to leave, so then he actually leaves and you complain. That's not that big of a loss for West Virginia. He will start at Western Kentucky, and I wish him nothing but the best. He did the best he could, but he wasn't the quarterback for West Virginia. And finally, 3-star wide receiver Winston Wright. That'll hurt West Virginia a little bit, but not as bad as what people were thinking. Oh, but Golden Blue Dude, he was our leading wide receiver last year. Yeah, he was our leading wide receiver on a bad offense. And he only had a little over 600 yards receiving, and there was like 5 or 6 wide receivers that were bunched there right with him around that 600-yard mark. Not that big of a loss for West Virginia, guys. He transferred over to Florida State. There were 2 losses that actually did hurt West Virginia. The first one was 4-star cornerback Jackie Matthews. He transferred to Mississippi State. He was a great starting cornerback for West Virginia. That's going to hurt a little bit, but from what I'm seeing, what we got from recruiting and the transfer portal, I think we'll be more than fine at the cornerback position. There's 4-star defensive lineman Hakeem Mesidor. He transferred to Miami. That one hurt West Virginia, and it hurt Coach Neil Brown specifically because he recruited this guy hard. In 24 hours, he flew to Miami to talk to this guy's family, and then he flew to Canada to talk to Hakeem Mesidor himself. So he invested a lot of time and effort into this guy. That hurt Coach Neil Brown. That's really the only loss I can say that's going to hurt West Virginia. But we did go out in the transfer portal and help in that situation. Don't forget, Jordan Jefferson is going to take over now, and he's pretty good. Our defensive line had excellent depth, so we do have guys that can fill that position, but Hakeem Mesidor, he was a playmaker. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, no, that doesn't hurt West Virginia at all. It does, but I think we have guys that can step up and help fill that void. Now, what about incoming transfers? I think West Virginia did pretty stinking good in the transfer portal. In fact, we finished number 33. Some of the bigger names that we got through the transfer portal: linebacker Tyree Austin Cave, the 3-star transfer from Miami. He gives us more depth at the linebacker position. We have great playmakers at linebacker position, but we didn't have a lot of depth. That definitely helps the depth. And we went out and got defensive lineman Michael Lockhart, the 3-star from Georgia Tech. He's one of the guys that I was talking about earlier that we went out and got to kind of help fill that Hakeem Mesidor void. Potential big-time playmaker. Linebacker Jasir Cox, the 3-star transfer from North Dakota State. This guy's going to help with our linebacking situation and our safety situation. He's a hybrid linebacker safety, so he can play both positions. That was a massive pickup for West Virginia. Tight end Brian Pollandy, 3-star from Colorado State. Already hearing a lot of things. I think he's going to be a big-time part of our offense this year. Yeah, we're actually going to use a tight end this year. Quarterback Marcus Floyd, the 3-star from Murray State. Big-time playmaker over there. All-American. I expect him to be one of the starting quarterbacks right alongside Charles Woods. And that's why I'm not worried about our quarterback situation. I think getting defensive end Zaquee Lawton, the 3-star from Cincinnati, also helps to fill that void that Hakeem Mesidor left on that defensive line. And then 2 big-time playmakers on offense. Running back Lynn J. Dixon, the 4-star from Clemson. This guy had an amazing 2020 season. Letdown year last year in 2021, but that was mainly locker room situation. I'm hearing he got that cleaned up, and he gets along with everybody. And then finally, the 5-star quarterback transfer from Georgia, JT Daniels. This guy is a difference maker, and one of the main reasons that we got JT Daniels is offensive coordinator Graham Harrell. That's the hire that changes everything. He is the main reason why West Virginia is going to be a much, much better football program than what we were last year. Neil Brown tried to call plays. That didn't work out very well. Then he handed off the duties to Jared Parker. He tried to call plays. That didn't work out very well. Now we have a true offensive coordinator who's really, really good. So not just a body that's calling plays. This guy knows what he's doing. Every year at USC, Graham Harrell had at least a top 25 offense. There was a couple years when he had the top 10 offense. And every time he's gone somewhere, whether it's North Texas or USC, offense scores automatically 10 more points a game than what they did last year on average. So this year, I'm expecting a major jump as far as points per game for West Virginia this year under Graham Harrell and JT Daniels. And don't forget that all 5 of our starting offensive linemen, they're going to be back. That matters too. So last year, we averaged right around 25 points per game. This year, I think West Virginia is going to average between 35 and 40 points a game. If you would have applied that to last year, we would have won all but but one of our games. The only game that we would have lost would have been at Baylor. Last year, the only thing we were missing, offense. So this year, our defense, once again, going to be legit. Now our offense is going to be legit. So here's a look at the 2022 West Virginia football season. We start off the season on the road to Pitt. At first, I was very, very nervous about that road trip. Then we got Graham Harrell and JT Daniels. So then I was confident that we could win in a close game. Kenny Pickett graduated, but then Pitt lost Jordan Addison in the transfer portal to USC, the best wide receiver in the nation. Now I'm confident that West Virginia will beat Pitt by double digits to start off the season. That'll be a massive ego boost for this team. And we come back home to Kansas. That's a win, although I do think Kansas will be good, and I don't think Kansas finishes dead last. I think that honor belongs to TCU this year. We stay at home against FCS Townsend. That's an easy win right there. So starting off the season 3-0. In a road trip to Virginia Tech, who we did beat last year. Virginia Tech's not going to be very good at all. They are in total rebuild mode. However, it is a road game, so that will keep Virginia Tech in the game. But I think West Virginia overall is just much more talented than Virginia Tech. I think that's a close win for West Virginia. So we're starting off the season 4-0. A tricky road test on the road to Texas. Texas is going to be much better this year, and they have a lot of talent. I think West Virginia could slip up on the road to Texas right there. So for the benefit of the doubt, I'm going to say a loss for West Virginia at Texas. That's still 4-1. Then we get a bye week. I think that bye week is perfectly placed if we lose to Texas and then come back home to Baylor, where I think we beat Baylor. Baylor will still be a good football team. I have them getting to the Big 12 championship, but it is at home, and West Virginia is a much better team this year. Baylor's never beaten West Virginia in Morgantown. I'm giving the win to West Virginia. Then a revenge game on the road to Texas Tech. Texas Tech is also in total rebuild mode. I think West Virginia goes on the road and gets the win. We come back home. I think we beat a bad TCU team convincingly. We go on the road to Iowa State. At first, I had this as a loss, but the more I look into Iowa State, the worse I think they'll be. I think West Virginia wins a close road game against Iowa State. After that, we come back home to Oklahoma, and I think this year, this is the year that West Virginia will beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma is in a transition period. West Virginia's defense has been legit over the past 3 years. Now our offense is going to be really, really good, and I just think Oklahoma won't be able to score enough points to beat West Virginia. I think West Virginia beats Oklahoma for the first time since joining the Big 12. We stay at home against Kansas State. I do have Kansas State as a sleeper Big 12 contender this year, but this game is in Morgantown, and I think West Virginia wins this game convincingly. Then finally, on the road to Oklahoma State, even though I do have Oklahoma State taking a step back, I don't think it's a big enough step back to counterbalance this being a road game for West Virginia. So I think this is where West Virginia picks up their second loss. So the overall picture that I have for West Virginia next year, I think they'll go either 9-3 or 10-2. The only loss that I'm truly convinced on is at Oklahoma State. I'm not totally buying into losing at Texas, but just for argument's sake, I'll say the other loss is at Texas, and maybe they slip up somewhere else. So I think West Virginia has a massive bounce back year this year, and with JT Daniels having 2 years of eligibility and having phenom freshman Nico Markle, there will be a big time quarterback battle next year, and West Virginia will be even better in 2023. There you go. Not only am I saying that I think West Virginia is going to be much better this year, I gave you actual reasons. Now, if you have actual reasons why you don't think they'll have a much better year, or maybe you think they'll have a worse year, I'm open to any comments and opinions, so leave them in my comments section. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.